Hi everyone. One thing I've realized with politics is that nothing is what it seems. The media lull us into a false sense of reality by using propaganda and disinformation as a weapon for your mind. But oftentimes, the truth gets scattered, like leaves in the wind, and what you're left with is a carefully constructed narrative that unsuspecting victims won't question. Rather, they just believe whatever they are told. Don't you find it strange that the Trump-Russia collusion story that dominated headlines for a year has essentially evaporated into thin air, especially after this article came out? A report citing that evidence shows the DNC hack wasn't a hack at all, but a leak from an insider. The collusion narrative was swiftly replaced with the far-right racism KKK chant, hot off the heels of the violent Charlottesville rally. Don't get me wrong, the death of a left-wing activist allegedly struck by a car driven by a far-right activist is tragic, and I condemn political violence on all sides. But I'm also not so emotionally blinded that I can't recognize there are some elements about that circus of a rally that just don't add up. Remember, if you're seeking the truth, it's always important to follow the agenda both politically and financially. Who benefits from violent events like Unite the Right? And who loses? It's recently been uncovered that the organizer of Unite the Right, a guy named Jason Kessler, happened to be an ideological playmate of the left only a year ago. He was an avid supporter of Barack Obama, but most importantly, he was an active champion of the extreme left movement Occupy Wall Street. Ideological beliefs change over time, but it's hard to believe that someone would do a total 180, as in go from an extreme leftist to a white supremacist in roughly 1 year. Kessler is quoted in his own blog on December 12, 2015, now shut down but archived, as stating, "I can't think of any occupation I admire more than the professional provocateur, who has the courage and self-determination to court controversy despite all the slings and arrows of the world." As you're probably aware, the Occupy Wall Street movement was indirectly linked to George Soros, and I really wish I could do a video without bringing his name up. Is it possible Kessler is a paid provocateur, receiving his funding from one of George Soros's various well-funded public policy advocacy groups? Keep in mind, white nationalists have been exploited by agent provocateurs to make the political right look bad before. Some have even worked directly for the federal government. KKK leader Bill Wilkinson openly admitted to being an FBI informant and cooperator in 1981. Hal Turner, a white supremacist radio personality notorious for calling for the deaths of judges and lawmakers, turned out to be a provocateur paid by the FBI to drum up extremism. He was exposed in 2009 after his arrest led to the admission that almost everything he did was at the request of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Antifa riots have been going on for over a year, intensifying greatly with the Trump presidential campaign. They were the ones that shut down the Milo Yiannopoulos speech on the Berkeley campus in January. They smashed Starbucks windows, ironic, started fires, punched Trump supporters, hit them with flagpoles, pepper sprayed them, etc. They lit a limo on fire, owned by a Muslim entrepreneur, and smashed windows at the Trump inauguration. In another riot, one Antifa protester, who turned out to be a university professor, violently struck a Trump supporter in the head with a bike lock. He was arrested and charged with assault with a deadly weapon. There have been multiple scenarios of extreme left-wing violence in the US and abroad over the past year, including at the G20 summit in Hamburg. Figures compiled by the Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution in Germany found that 92% of left-wing Berlin activists lived at home. Of these, 84% were men and 72% were aged between 18 and 29. A third of them were unemployed. If I didn't know better, they sound like the perfect group of people to prey on. Desperate, young, and easy to manipulate, they could easily stir up chaos and terror and aggravate conservatives for a nominal amount of money. Yet for all their violence and rioting, the media has remained virtually silent on Antifa. Not only that, CNN recently defended left-wing extremism by saying they are seeking peace through violence, essentially emboldening radicalism. The media has also conflated white supremacy and Trump supporters, encouraging the belief that all Trump backers are Nazis, in what seems to be an effort to dehumanize anyone on the right and falsely associate them with white nationalist movements. Why would they do this? Any intellectually honest person can see Antifa is a terrorist organization that needs to be condemned. Brandon Smith at altmarket.com wrote an essay pertaining to this issue, and his theory soars above the left-right paradigm and takes aim directly at the globalist agenda. You see, globalists have no affiliation to any party. Banking oligarchs' interests serve the elites only. They only pretend to care about one side to further their own interests. They also have no ideological love for any particular nation or culture. Smith writes, quote, "In order to justify the madness and violence of the left in recent months, it is more important than ever for the establishment to maintain the lie that conservatives are also all violent racists and fascists that need to be destroyed. Propaganda alone is rarely enough to make such notions stick in the public consciousness. Sometimes provocateurs are needed to stir the pot," end quote. He believes that the political left in the U.S. has gone insane.
Donald J. Trump is now President of the United States. President
And it's no coincidence, instead part of a greater design to destroy conservatism. This is exemplified by the current behavior of SJW groups like Antifa, whose actions mimic the Maoists in China during the Cultural Revolution. Maoists sought to erase all vestiges of China's imperialist history in a wave of violence that resulted in the destruction of priceless artifacts. Eventually, the Red Guards turned their attention to those who didn't subscribe to their new social justice religion, and millions were killed and Chinese elites benefited. The left's goal starts with statues and eventually move to the Constitution and hopefully erase conservatism altogether. Smith believes they won't necessarily succeed. However, the more aggressive and unhinged the left becomes, the more inclined the right is to use the government as a weapon to stop them, which is pushing us toward a more totalitarian mindset. This is, of course, anti-freedom and anti-conservatism and a more centralized government, something the globalists desperately want and are working hard toward. The goal is to destroy conservatism by acting against the Constitution and serve the globalists by adopting their methods of government totalitarianism. So what do you think? Do you think all of this talk about white supremacy is manufactured and stirred up by professional provocateurs and the propaganda press? Let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much and have a great day.